This is ongoing because at the end of this unit, I'm going to ask you, hey, give me some ongoing expenses of owning a home. And what are some one time, it's just you just pay it once and then never again, right? So you need to have the difference. So property insurance, obviously insurance, you always need to have that. That's going to be ongoing. But land transfer tax, back to page 19, is a one-time expense. This is on page 19. You only pay this once, but it is significant. Okay? Land transfer tax, you pay this tax in Manitoba to the Manitoba Land Titles Office at the time, right? You pay this tax at the title of your home is registered. It's when the owner of a property changes, the Manitoba government collects this revenue, and the lawyer hired to do the transaction will ensure the money gets transferred properly. So there's a lawyer involved that will transfer that money. You pay the lawyer, it goes in a trust fund. The trust fund, then the lawyer pays the government. Okay, so that's how it goes. Home buyers have to be aware of this cost. It is a one-time large cost required before possession. Oh, they're cutting the grass. The first $200,000 of the value of the house is taxed according to a scale. So first 200,000 is according to a scale. Then anything over 200,000 is just 2%. And this gets a little complicated, but I have over the years developed a system. If you follow it to the T, you'll get it right every single time, just like insurance. Okay, so let me show you a quick. I have a software, notebook software. I used to have a smartboard. Now it's just a not so smart board. But this is how it works. Let's say that's the scale. So the first $30,000 of your home, you pay 0% tax, land transfer tax. So if you're lucky to get a property, it could just be a piece of land that it is anything less than 30,000, you pay no taxes on it. If it's over 30,000, the next 60,000 they tax you 0.5%. The next 60,000 they tax you 1%. You don't have to write this down because it's on the chart. Then the next 50,000 they tax you 1.5%. So it's kind of incremental. The more the property is worth, they chunk it and they chunk it and they tax you according to that. Anything over 200,000, which is 90% of the houses now, is going to have a land. Anything over that is 2%. So let's say this is the house you're buying, right? It's like worth 280,000. You would kind of like put it over top of that, and then we would chunk it up, right? We would be like, okay, chunk, right? We pay this much here, and chunk. We pay that much there, and that much there, and that much there, and then there's this chunk that gets taxed 2%. Okay, so by the by the time you're done, you're probably paying thousands of dollars. Yes, sure. Okay, so let's get started here. It goes as follows. So here you have your chart. This will be provided. Okay, chart will be provided on tests. Okay, so you don't have to worry about copying that chart. Don't worry about filling that space in your study sheet. Okay. So here is the first example. You ready? Calculate the land transfer tax amount for a house worth 380. So I choose like a really like on the expensive side house. Okay. So this is how you do it. Let me just get my key ready here. so that I know how much space. Okay, yeah, we're good. So you take the 385,000. Just make sure you write this down, guys. Okay? You take the 385,000 and you subtract, what does it say here? The first 30 grand? I'll take the highlighter and just go over those 30 grand, 60, 60, 50. Those are the amounts you want to highlight. Okay? $30, $60, $60, $50. Right? Can I do one more thing? Let's turn this into a decimal. 0.5% as a decimal is 0.005. Right? If you divide this by 100, you get that. 1% is 0.01. 1.5% is 0.015. And 2% is 0.02. Okay? So these are the ones I'm going to be using because I don't want percentage when I'm working with dollar amounts. Okay? So watch this. You take the 30,000 here, you subtract it. And you multiply it by whatever the percentage is. What do you pay for the first 30,000? 0%, right? So it's kind of obvious, but you're going to pay $0 for the first 30,000. Then, Francesca, we're on page 19, okay? So you subtract this, 385 minus 30,000, that's 355. I will highlight that 30,000 just to show you, right? That's a fixed amount. It comes from this table up here. Okay? What's the next amount on my table? 60 grand. So you got to subtract 60 grand. And for the 60 grand, you pay 0.5%. So you multiply that by 0.005 and just put that on hold for now. We're not going to calculate that. We're going to do that later. If you go 355 minus the 60,000, you end up with 295,000. It's like a landing strip there. Minus, what's the next amount on my chart? There's another 60,000 here. See my pencil up here? So I need to go minus 60,000 again. And that, what am I paying on that 60,000? I'm paying 1%, right? Just put it on hold for now. Subtract this. I'm going to highlight that 60,000 again. As long as you have enough money left over, you keep subtracting. Okay? And so that gives me 235,000. What's the next amount I need to subtract? 50 grand. See my pencil? That's the next one. I'm just following that. 50 grand. And on that, I pay, just go to the chart, 1.5%, which ends up being that as a decimal. I will highlight the 50 grand because these numbers, the highlighted numbers, come from the table. Okay. Then you're left with, if you subtract these two, you're left with 185. There's nothing left to subtract, correct? We went through the 30, 60, 60, 50, and then anything else gets taxed 2%. So what you do here is you just multiply this by 0.02 and you get that amount. I would always suggest you do this first and write out what you're supposed to multiply it by and then figure out these numbers. Okay? So grab your calculator if you have one. I'm going to go 60,000 times 0.005. It's 300 bucks. So you're going to be paying 300 for sure. Anybody, let's do some mental math. 60,000 times 1%, what would that be? That'd be 600 bucks, yeah. If you don't trust me, just use your calculator and figure it out. And then 50,000 times 0.015, 750. Okay, so 750. And those amounts you will get used to pretty soon. You're just gonna know which ones they are. You're not gonna use your calculator all the time. And now here's the last one. I need to take the 185,000 and multiply it by 0.02. And here's where your heartbeat is gonna go up. 3,700. Anything over 200,000 is taxed 2%. So you have to write down 3,700 here. And now you're ready to come up with a land transfer tax. Land transfer tax. You just add up all these numbers. I'm not going to add up zero, okay? It's kind of irrelevant. When you add all of that up, you get a whopping 5,350. That has to be paid at the time of land transfer. Like when you're buying that new property, go ahead. If you're buying a new property, you're gonna have to pay that. This is like down to the cent. This is exactly what you're gonna pay. The insurance, when I make you calculate the insurance, it's kind of an estimated amount. This is exactly. This is you can do this yourself any day. Okay. I will tell you a trick later when you're buying it with someone else, like let's say your parents. I will show you a trick there because if you don't do that, you could pay a lot down the road. So I will tell you what to do. My lawyer told me that, and it saved me a lot of money. Okay, but not today. I need to do one more example before we go. Okay, so can you imagine $5,000 gone? You're never gonna see that again. Bye bye. Right? Nobody tells you that. So you know when they say just have your down payment, it's basically down payment and that. You need to have that as well. So we'll talk about that. Watch this, guys. Calculate the land transfer tax. This is going to be different, so you got to pay attention. It's going to be somewhat the same at the beginning, but it will change. A house worth $135,000. I don't know if you notice. Look at the amounts. This one does not go past the $200,000. So that's where this is different. So if you're falling asleep, wake up right now. Okay, this is going to be one that you need to make sure you know how to do. You start with your 135. I'm going to go a little bit faster. I subtract the first 30,000 from it. I pay $0 on that. I'm not even going to bother multiplying it by 0. Okay, no point. I'm left with 105,000. What's the next amount I need to subtract? I'm going to borrow from here. 60,000. And with that first 60,000, I pay 0.005. I pay 0.5%. So I'm going to write it down there and continue my journey. What am I left with? Mental math, 105 minus 60, 45,000. And this is where you need to think. Can I subtract? Write it down first. Take a second or two, write it down. Make sure you have this down because I need you to, this needs to be understood. I go through my list, right? I go through my list, but you're gonna have to stop at one point. You cannot go minus 60,000, can you? No, you'd be at a minus. You can't do that. So when you're trying to subtract, and you don't have enough money left to subtract from, you stop. But what would have been the next number here, the next percentage? You go 0.05, right, which you already did, And then the next one where you're stuck at, that's the one that will be applied to that amount left over. Okay? So you go times 0.01 and you write it down like that. And underneath, I'll just say can't subtract anymore, right? Can't subtract anymore. So you stop. Whenever you're going to be in the minus, you stop. But you take the percentage that would have been attached to that second 60,000 bracket. And then let's figure out. I'm going to borrow my answers from up top here. 60,000 times 0.005 is 300 bucks. And then 40, what would this be? 450, right? I hope that makes sense. And we can do this we can do mental math here, right? 300 plus 450. That's only 750 bucks. This, to me personally, this table is very outdated, right? Like those brackets need to be changed because the houses have gone up. So the city is just really milking it, right? Like they're just lining their pockets because most houses are over 300,000, right? So let's say you buy a house this year, and after 5 years you buy another house. You're gonna have to pay that again. Every time you buy a new house, you pay that. So the more transactions there are every year, the more houses there are sold every year, the happier the city is. Because every time somebody has to pay that. But you don't pay it if you sell. You only pay it when you buy it. So the buyer pays that. Okay. One more before we go, and that'll be it, guys. And you have 3 examples to go off of. So maybe tomorrow I can already AC you on this first thing. The 190,000 is right there, so I'm just going to use that. I'm going to take off 30 grand. Mr. Erickson, where did you get the 30 grand from? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I got it from that table right here. Okay. I pay $0 on that, so I'm just going to write that down next to it. I'm left with 160 grand. Can I subtract 60 from it? Yes. And I pay 0.005 on that. I'm left with 100 grand. Can I keep subtracting? Yes. The next number is also 60,000. And that I pay 1% on, so I'm going to put it like that. I'm left with 40 grand. What's the next amount I would have to subtract? Right? 30, 60, 60, it'd be 50. Can I subtract 50,000 from it? Nope. But 50,000 would have 1.5% on it, right? So you grab that, you attribute that 1.5% to that remaining balance. So we're close, but we couldn't, right? And I'm going to cheat a little bit. Not really. I'm just using my answer from before. 300. And then this one here is 600. That's what I mean. Sometimes you're just going to know. Just going to fill it in, right? And then this one, you might have to use a little bit of maybe mental math, but maybe you just want to use caution and find 1.5%. Just make sure your zeros are where they're supposed to be, right? So that's 600 bucks as well. So land transfer tax is 300 plus 600 plus 600, and that is 1,500. Oops. This particular property would only be 1,500. So as you can tell, as soon as you're over 200,000, that's when it really starts to accumulate. Okay, and I wouldn't be surprised if this scale is from like the early 1900s, probably, like, because right, like it doesn't make sense that it's that low for the first 200,000, then it goes up. All right, that's it, guys.